Are you a bird photographer shooting with a Sony camera and wondering what are the best Sony lenses for bird photography? In this video, I'm going to share with you my go-to Sony lenses for wildlife or bird photography, along with photos and video taken with these lenses. This is my ultimate collection of Sony lenses for bird photography. Hey, Dave Reed here. Thanks for tuning in. Recently, I've switched from shooting almost 100% Canon cameras and lenses to now shooting almost 100% Sony cameras and lenses for my bird photography. Why the switch? What's the difference? Great questions, and I think I just might have found the subject for my next video. Thanks again for tuning in, and please help to support my channel by subscribing and hitting that notifications button below so you won't miss my next video. And if you'd like to learn more about my bird photography and how I took each photo, check out my Instagram channel where I detail what birding camera I used and the camera settings for each bird photo. A few years back, I picked up a Sony A7 camera just to try it out. Although it was limited in its function, the images it produced were at the time fantastic. But Sony wasn't ready to take on real bird photography or sports photography. The camera bodies weren't fast enough or functional for this high demand. And the biggest reason I stayed with Canon was that Sony didn't have any real lenses for taking photos of birds. Then came along the Sony A7R Mark IV, and everything changed for me. Now I had a Sony camera capable of keeping up with the high demands of bird photography. But what about the lenses? Well, around the same time, Sony dropped on the market a number of lenses that were ideal for bird photography. Now they had the camera bodies and lenses for me to give it a real try. So what are the best Sony lenses for bird photography? Well, these are my go-to bird photography lenses when shooting with the Sony A7R Mark IV and the Sony A7R Mark II. The bird photos you're looking at are all taken with the Sony FE 70-200mm f2.8 G Master OSS lens. This is a must-have lens for just about any photographer. All camera manufacturers have a 70-200mm f2.8 for a reason. It's a workhorse. I typically have this lens mounted to my Sony A7R Mark II as a secondary setup. It's ideal for walking around and snapping shots of birds that just happen to fly near you. Because it's a fast lens at f2.8, it's also perfect for capturing bird photos on overcast low-light days. The Sony FE 100-400mm f4.5 to 5.6 G Master OSS lens is bolted to my Sony A7R Mark IV. This combination is perfect for me for bird photography. I get the reach needed for those distant bird shots, and I have the resolution to punch in post-production. These bird pictures and video are all captured with the Sony FE 100-400mm lens. Around the same time Sony came out with the Sony A7R Mark IV and Sony A9 II, they dropped on the market the Sony FE 200-600mm f5.6 to 6.3 G OSS lens. In my mind, this lens was made to take on the third-party lenses from Sigma and Tamron, both on reach and price point. I actually traded in my Sigma 150-600mm sport lens I was using on my Canon cameras for this Sony birding lens. Like the other lenses, the bird photos you're looking at are all taken with the Sony's 200-600mm lens. You think for bird photography this would be my go-to lens, but it's not for me. I still use it for bird photography, just not as often as the Sony 100-400mm lens. So why am I showing you a Sony FE 85mm f1.8 prime lens for bird photography? Well, there are three main reasons I have the Sony 85mm lens with me when I go out to shoot bird photos. The pictures you're looking at cover these main reasons. First, the wide aperture is perfect for low light situations. Second, the bokeh or blurred out background is buttery smooth. And last, not always am I shooting photos of birds while birding. As a photographer, I see everything as a picture, and the 85mm gives me a good focal length to capture other things around me while out capturing bird photos. Now we're stepping up to the serious bird photography lenses from Sony. The Sony 400mm f2.8 G Master OSS lens is simply a beautiful lens, and one we'd all like in our camera bag. The photos you're looking at were all captured with this lens while I was out testing it. I was comparing Sony bird photography lenses, specifically the 100 to 400mm against the 400mm prime. Outside of the enormous cost difference, the Sony 400mm prime lens was less a bird lens than a sporting lens. Yes, it works, but it's much more limited than the Sony 100 to 400mm lens for capturing bird photos. The granddaddy of lenses offered by Sony for bird photography is the Sony FE 600mm f4 G Master OSS lens, an awesome lens at an even more awesome price. Perfect for capturing photos of birds, the Sony 600mm is a lens any of us would want in our camera bag, but it's just not practical for many of us. So like the Sony 400mm prime lens test, I tested the 600mm prime against the Sony 200 to 600mm for capturing birds. Yeah, the winner was obviously the Sony 600mm for capturing stunning bird photos, but it was just too expensive for me to consider buying. Thanks for watching my must-have Sony lenses for bird photography. I hope you learned a little more about what Sony lenses are ideal for capturing pictures of birds. Please leave a comment below if you have any questions on these lenses or have different go-to lenses for Sony for capturing birds in the wild. If you like what you heard and saw, please subscribe to my channel and hit that notifications button. Also, if you want to know more about how I took a specific photo, check out my Instagram channel for full specs on the Sony camera and lens I use to capture each bird photo. Remember, it's your photography. Go shoot it.